gun stores had a revenue about...
Okay, so what are your views towards guns?
My views are that guns are necessary for self-defense. I very much subscribe to the idea that, of Thomas Jefferson that not only should you own a gun for self-defense in your own home, but he said the greatest and most important reason for the right to bear arms is as a last resort to defend yourself against tyranny of the government. So I think it is important. I don't agree with what he said that we should tear down the government every 20 years, but I think it is important to protect yourself against tyranny. I don't feel that people need to own machine guns. I don't know if that's necessary, but I also don't think it's my place to tell people what kind of guns they should own and what kind they shouldn't.
Okay, just started it. All right, what are your views towards guns? Like, by views, I mean, like, what do you think about them? Like, whenever you see something bad, does it make you feel a certain way?
Well, I grew up in an area where gun use was pretty commonplace, so I have some familiarity with shooting. So I don't have a natural negative reaction to them. I do believe very, very strongly that there should be mandatory gun training, right, and awareness programs, and basic safety standards that go along with that.
We can't solve our gun problem because it's complicated, emotional, and deeply enmeshed with Americans' sense of power and control.
Do you think that there can be any new laws that can help, both sides, a law that could play devil's advocate and help both sides with the subject, like people who don't like them and want them gone and people who want them here still?
Well, every time there's a mass shooting, people blame guns. They don't blame the shooter. And the problem that we get with like this recent shooting in New Zealand is like the guy who did the shooting, he purposely did it to stoke fires on both sides. He purposely did it to inflame and enrage everybody. And as usual, nobody's paying attention to that. Nobody's paying attention to the fact that he purposely wanted to make people angry at each other and lose focus on the issue that it isn't the guns, it's the person. Right? So we should find out why that person is angry instead of just saying, well, the problem is guns. And of course, along with banning guns, hand in hand with that is people saying that we should limit free speech because his hateful rhetoric needs to be suppressed. So just automatically throwing legislation at something isn't going to fix it. You need to find out what's wrong with these people. Maybe they feel like they're not being heard, that they're not being represented, and they're lashing out. The idea is tolerance, listening to them. By understanding them, we can avoid the violence. But the more we saw with prohibition that the more things that you make outlawed, the more crime you have. So it would be the exact same thing. If we made guns outlawed, well, not only would there be a civil war, but it would, even if there wasn't, there would be such a horror. The black market would expand exponentially.
Do you think that there's any laws that could be made to help our situation?
I do think there are laws that can be better designed. For instance, regarding regulating gun use, maybe a certain number, or regulating who has the ability to buy them. I think more importantly, we need better enforcement of laws that are in place, because I think oftentimes there already are laws in place. We just struggle with the enforcement. And of course, we have the Constitution and the Second Amendment as well. And so we've got to make sure that those laws don't necessarily conflict with that.
Have you ever owned a gun?
No.
Do you plan on ever getting one?
I've thought about it. My wife has good arguments against it. More gun violence happens in family homes between family members than there is. I've read that statistic. I don't know if it's been updated, but 2 years ago it was still accurate. More violence happens within the family when you own a gun than is committed on the street.
Have you ever owned a gun?
Yes.
What kind of gun was it?
Handgun.
Have you ever lost someone towards guns? Has anyone?
Yes.
Your family member?
Yes. Not a family member, but a close friend of my wife's was killed in a multiple person shooting in I don't know if it was Newport Beach or Huntington Beach, but it was a friend of hers, a hairstylist. She was shot and killed by a guy who came in to kill his wife and killed several other people. It was like 4 years ago. That's the closest that's come to me.
Was your wife devastated by the...
Absolutely. She still cries about it. But my wife agrees with me on my stance. She has the same stance about it, that the idea is not to police the instrument, it's to find out what's wrong with the person.
All right.
Yeah.
Have you ever lost someone towards a gun shooting or any gun violence?
Suicide. So, and that, suicide by firearm. So yes, a friend, nobody directly within my own
But
family.
did it really impact you?
It did, absolutely. I got to be honest with you. I don't think it necessarily was because of the shooting. You know what I mean? He could have done it in a number of other ways, and I think I would have just been as strongly affected by it.
Okay, do you have anything else to say about the topic? Like, any last words or anything that can enlighten someone hearing this documentary?
I understand why people think that outlawing firearms is a solution. I understand why they think that banning it, I can see their side. But the reason I don't agree with it is just that the more power you give to the government and the more things that you outlaw, I really do think that prohibition is a great example to use of trying to, and I do feel this also, that when they did prohibition, they're legislating morality. They're telling people what's right and wrong. It's wrong for you to want to defend yourself, right? And people will end up feeling helpless. And when they feel helpless, they're just going to lash out, right? So I understand where they're coming from, and I want a solution too. I hate it when people get killed. It makes me tear up. I get very upset. But I see the past mistakes, and people need to learn from the past mistakes of our country's history and realize.
Do you have anything to say about the topic? Anything else to say? Like anything that would sort of change a person's mind to how would it be to work together in order to create a better world?
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think we need to have real dialogues about gun ownership and gun usage. And unfortunately, I think because the topic is so fiery, no pun intended, I think people naturally bring a lot of emotion into their topics and into their discussion. I have a lot of friends, for instance, that'll be like post things online that are like, they'll take my guns over my dead body, right? And things like that. And I think we need to have healthy dialogues about this, and we need to try to suspend our emotion and kind of leave that at the door, and ask ourselves, are there common sense solutions that we can come together on? Because I think they're out there, right? And clearly we have a gun violence problem in this country. However, crime rates are much lower than they've been in the past. And so you're less likely, I think, to be a victim of gun violence than you would have been in the past. But that doesn't mean that we can't still have constructive dialogues and come together and find some common sense solutions.